Welcome to Born on the Bayou Sports, a Houston sports show made for Houstonians by Houstonians. Join Tim Costello and Scott Barzilla every week as they break down the latest in Houston Astros, Rockets, and Texans news. Tim's a former minor league broadcaster, and Scott has written 2 books on the Baseball Hall of Fame. Yeah, if Javier could get it figured out, it would make things a lot easier because he was that guy everybody was counting on this year to be a Cy Young candidate, take that big step forward and help anchor this rotation with Fromber.
Since he's come to Houston, you can look at the development of guys like Carlos Correa defensively, Jeremy Pena defensively. I mean, you can Alex Bregman's, certainly I think a better than average third baseman.
And now you're putting teams in 3rd and 8, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 9. Now here comes Will Anderson. Pin back your ears, let's go. So if you're Bayou born and bred, or just like spending time in the H, sit down, relax, and stay Houston strong. Welcome back into another exciting edition. Free agency is upon us, Scott, as the NFL legal tampering period is here, and the Texans, although we started pretty quiet, they are making moves now.
Absolutely. You're going to have to change the promo because, part of the promo has you talking about, pin back your ears, here comes Will Anderson, let's go. You're going to have to add a name in there.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's build up to that because, there was a time early on in this free agency period, Scott, where you were texting me saying Nick Caserio was on the hook for scumbag as Saquon was off the board, Swift was off the board, Jacobs is off the board, Jones gets cut and then immediately basically signed with Minnesota. He's off the board. And Scott Barzilla's texted me saying, hey, Nick Caserio is on the hook for my scumbag. But I think, I harped to you then. What I harp now is let's trust the process. And, I think the Texans are now all of a sudden putting together an unbelievable start to the offseason. You can't win the Super Bowl in March, but you could sure lose it this point of the season.
Well, and I think what history has shown, and I'm going to peel back the curtain here, and ask Tim to do the same. Of course, he can take the bait or not. Have you ever had the wonderful experience that is the hangover?
I have. It's been a minute, but I have definitely been hungover.
I think that's what free agency is like for a lot of these guys. And I think a lot of these free agents are like the tequila shots, and then the next day, and it's like, oh, what was I thinking? And, I think I'm not going to say everybody's had that moment. There's some teetotalers among us who haven't done such things, but I think most adults have had that moment where it's like, I shouldn't have been doing that last night. And I think if left to his own devices, Nick Caserio probably wouldn't have made a couple of the bigger signings that he did. I think that's probably some of the influence of D'Amico Ryans. He said before free agency, right when the offseason was starting, his goal was to upgrade the defensive line. And clearly you can see that that's happened.
When you look at a majority of the moves that were made, the theme was defense along the way, and it was a certain type of defender, right? They were looking in the secondary. They wanted long, lanky defensive backs. You bring back a guy like Lonnie Johnson who, may have been misused during the Bill O'Brien era. We don't know. Bill O'Brien couldn't decide if he wanted that guy to play safety, if he wanted to play cornerback. He played a majority of cornerback last year and did look better, so that's okay, that's an opportunity. And then Udo, a top 5 pick, long, lanky cornerback, has the potential to be a shutdown guy, just has not been able to stay on the field, stay healthy. And then the guys that you mentioned, Danico Autry, 11.5 sacks last year. And then Daniil Hunter, 16.5 sacks last year, 11 sacks the year before that. I mean, you're bringing in 27 sacks on the defensive line when you talk about a front four that can just go get it between Collins and Will Anderson and Hunter and Autry, you're going to create some pressure, right? And then let's not forget, you go sign a linebacker who had 163 tackles last year. It was even better the year before when he played for D'Amico Ryans in San Francisco.
Yeah, I think that is definitely an underrated signing there because you lost Blake Cashman, walked out the door, went to Minnesota along with Jonathan Kennard, and you replaced him with somebody better. And so, then there aren't many opportunities for that. I mean, Patrick Queen was mentioned, tied with the Texans for a while. He ended up signing with Pittsburgh. They end up getting another defensive tackle from the Titans, and I'm trying to remember his name. I can't remember him off the top of my head.
Other than Danico Autry?
Yes, other than he's an inside guy. He did not have any sacks, but he was more of a run stuffer. And I think, one of the things when you look at, and Sheldon Rankins is still out there. He could still come back. But one of the things when you looked at, and I know you don't look at PFF much, but if you look at the run defense grades for both Malik Collins and Sheldon Rankins, they were getting just absolutely bludgeoned against the run. Against the pass, they're really good. I mean, they're really good pressure guys. So to me, if you could bring back a Sheldon Rankins, but maybe have him as more of a pass rushing specialist inside, and you have a run stuffing D tackle along with those, three defensive ends that you can rotate, you can keep them fresh because you have, three guys that had 10 plus sacks. Well, Anderson didn't, but probably could have. I mean, you could keep them fresh. I mean, that's the whole beauty of this. Guys are not going to play 1,200 snaps on the defensive line. That's just not done.
No, it's not.
So to have three guys that could play 700 or 800 snaps apiece and be fresh, that's huge.
Absolutely. And just the versatility seems to be the key word on this defense. You're going to have a lot of guys who can play tackle, who can play inside, who can play outside. Especially when you look at the defensive backs that have been brought in, they can play safety, they can play corner, they can play nickel. There's a lot of pieces that can be moved around. You've got a lot of guys that can hit. And again, the linebacker that the Texans brought in, Azeez Al-Shaair, 163 tackles last year. Fifth in the NFL in tackles. He had 71 run stops, and 103 of his 163 tackles were on the run. That's been a weakness for this Texans team for 2 or 3 years now, Scott, right? When they need to get a stop against the run, it seems like there were times they could not do it. So a guy who comes in and shuts the run down is going to be fantastic. You still have Will Harris. The linebacker Harris. Christian Harris, who's a good cover linebacker too. Had a pick six in the playoffs. Is young. Will get better under D'Amico's tutelage. This is the defense that I look at it right now going into the draft, and I think what this free agency period really has done, it's allowed you to go best player available in the draft. I feel like you don't go into the draft with a huge, we have to go this direction. We have to find the solution here. I feel like what the Texans free agency moves and what they did last year have really done is you've allowed the board to come to you. You've allowed the best player available to go to be hopefully falling into your lap. If something happens where a player starts dropping for an unknown reason, it doesn't matter what position. You're in that position of luxury where you've got a good running back thanks to a 7th round pick for Joe Mixon. You've got 2 good wide receivers, maybe Hutch or maybe Mechie comes along for a 3rd. If not, take a receiver in the draft. You've got some promising pieces on the offensive line that hopefully develop in year 2. Unless, a great guard or a tackle falls to you, okay, take them. I don't know about you, Scott, but to me it just seems like going into the draft, what the Texans have done in free agency they've set themselves up beautifully to go best player available.
I think I see them. Of course, we still have over a month until the draft, And so we have a month of free agency left, and there's going to be guys that fall through the cracks. But I think when you look at what they've done on offense, they're bringing back the exact same group, minus Devin Singletary plus Joe Mixon. So is Joe Mixon better than Devin Singletary? I mean,
Yes.
statistically, he is. Statistically, he is.
He's got more skill sets, right? I think Singletary, you worry about running it between the tackles too much. I think Mixon could take that pounding a little bit more and still give you the pass catching ability.
I think what you're looking at with free agency, and I think what Nick Caserio, I think what happened with him is that you see these guys have a price. And I think, he's pretty good about setting his price that this is what I want to pay for this. And when those guys come in above that, just saying, okay, I'm letting them go. Like Saquon Barkley, we were talking about bringing him in. I looked at his numbers, and his numbers, some of it made me squeamish. But then, you say, hey, have a Saquon Barkley. I'd be like, yeah, not for 13 or 14 million a year, like he's going to get from the Eagles. We talked about Mike Evans. Hey, be lovely to have a Mike Evans, but not for 26 million a year. So can you go out? I mean, this draft is going to be rich in wide receivers. Hell, LSU probably may have 3 first-round wide receivers just by themselves. So to me, you get the 23rd pick. If you see a wide receiver you like there, you get a guy on the cheap. You sit there and say, I want you to be a third wide receiver. What's great about that is that you're going to have that rookie and Tank Dell on rookie contracts right before you have to pay Nico Collins. And so, I think the way Nick Caserio has set this up is he set this up pretty smart in that he can get some cheap position player talent on the offensive side. Particularly, I think you draft another running back, probably mid-rounds. Let that guy, compete with Dameon Pierce to be the backup running back. And you have a guy that's probably going to be set up to be your future because Joe Mixon is essentially a one-year deal. So, I mean, I think you're setting yourself up for the future with this draft.
Yeah, it's kind of, in Casario we trust now, right? It's kind of a great job of spreading the wealth. You've got guys who wanted to buy in. There's a lot of rumor out there. Hunter could have gotten north of 28, 29, $30 million a year. He ends up settling about 24 and a half, so a little bit of a hometown discount. But you're right, Casario has a price, and I think I was in the same mindset as you with Saquon. If we could have got him at 10 a year, 2 years, 20 million, I was all aboard that train. But the moment it got too expensive, I understood why we got to the position we did for running back, right? Like, I was not willing to pay $10, $12 million a year for that position. And again, I love the move that they made of a conditional 7th round pick, because how many times are you going to get outbid for the guy that you want before you just say, you know what, let's go ahead and send a little bit of draft capital. The cap number's 8. That was a number that we all felt we were comfortable going to get a free agent. It's a 1-year deal. We still have the flexibility going forward. As you said, we could draft a guy. Or, hey, if Mixon kills it, okay, we bring him back on a 2-year deal. Great. Sounds good, everybody. And I think, they're in a great position to add. They're in a great position to get a receiver, as you mentioned, in the draft, to get, even move up in the draft if they wanted to. Say a guy like Brock Bowers. I know it's not going to happen, but what if Brock Bowers falls to like 15? You trade up. You go get a guy like Brock Bowers, and then you can run some 2 tight end sets. You could do some crazy stuff going forward like the Patriots did before Aaron Hernandez, turned into a murderer, when they were just running the league over with Gronk and Aaron Hernandez. I mean, this offense has some serious possibilities simply because Casario's, he's got a line, he's got a line and he doesn't go over it. He and Jim Crane, I saw a quote earlier, if he wanted to go work for the Astros, he and Jim Crane would get along fantastically because they both have that number, right? Like, we'll pay you a fair amount, but if you want more than that, hey, good luck in Toronto, good luck in Minnesota, good luck on the Mets. We have a number that we're willing to pay. There's going to be guys who take that number. If it's not you, will enjoy competing against you. And when you have a quarterback like C.J. Stroud, it gets you some of those guys who are willing to say, I'll take a little bit less because I really want a ring. I've been freezing my ass off in Minnesota for Kirk fucking Cousins. I'm ready to have a chance to win a ring with C.J. Stroud.
Yeah, I think we have to really, though, we cannot undersell the impact that D'Amico Ryans has had on the person of this team. Let's not even forget, what he's doing in terms of X's and O's and coaching guys up and stuff like that. Because, before Lovie Smith and David Culley, they were placeholders. They were just like, give me whoever you're going to give me. And so that's when we had like the Christian Kirksies of the world and, Neville Hewitts and people like that. And I think if you left Nick Caserio to his own devices, you would probably get more Lonnie Johnsons. I mean, hell, he probably would have brought David Johnson back, just said like, hey, let's see what he can do. But D'Amico Ryans, he stood on the table and he basically said, I want CJ Stroud. I want Will Anderson. And so as the GM, Caserio said, okay, I'll to make that happen. So he went and made that happen. And I guarantee you, he probably stood on the table this time and said, I want Daniel Hunter. Or I want, somebody like Christian Wilkins was a guy that they targeted early on. He signs with the Raiders for, I think, $28 million a year. Absolutely ridiculous total. But, he probably stood on the table and said, you got to give me a stud. And we talked last week long and hard about how they were going to make this offense like the 49ers offense. This is being made into the 49ers defense. I mean, take a look at what the 49ers have in their front seven. I mean, it's your Joey Bosa, there's your Will Anderson. Okay, your guy on the other side, and that's your Daniel Hunter. Okay, your kick-ass linebacker, you just signed him. Or it could be Christian Harris. I mean, the guys in the back, you brought in, Jimmy Ward, who was a 49er. You got your Derek Stingley, who probably is better than any corner San Francisco has. So, I don't know. You tell me, I mean, would you take, going forward the next 2 years, would you take this Texans defense or the 49ers defense?
That's tough. I think just it's going to be the Texans because the 49ers are going to continue to lose key pieces and the Texans are still pretty young, right? But I think when you have a defense like this, every game's winnable, right? Because the score's never, you don't have to go score 45 points to win a football game. When you have a defense that gets after it like this, typically you score 24, 27 points, you're going to get out of there with a win, right? And when you got a quarterback like C.J. Stroud, you could look at Bobby Slowick and say, look, Bobby, I need you to find 4 touchdowns a game out there. You got one of the best quarterbacks in the game. I need you to get me at least 4 touchdown drives a game. Figure it out. I'm gonna do the rest. And I think it's a credit to this whole organization, right? Because I think for the longest time you had, as you said, the GM would just go out and try and find great cheap deals and do the best he could, and everybody was placeholders. But when you've got a coach and a general manager that are in sync, he can stand on the table, like you said. He could say, I want both these guys. Then GM will say, okay, this is your vision. I trust your vision. This is now our vision, right? I think Caserio and D'Amico, it's now just a joint vision for this franchise. It's no longer, what does Caserio want versus what does D'Amico want, or is he is he one of the Easter Bay guys, or is he a Caserio guy, or is he an O'Brien guy? We're past those days, right? We have a GM and a coach who seem to be in sync, and I think we have a coach who has a relationship with his GM where he can go in and say, this guy would be a dog on my defense. If you can find a way to go get this guy, he will be a dog here. Here's a number I think you'd be willing to spend. You guys work it up on the cap, but I'm just telling you, Nick, you get me Hunter on the other side of Will Anderson, I think that's going to do something. Okay, thanks, Coach. We'll see what we can do. And I think that relationship is one that's allowed this team to build the defense the way that they have.
I'm giddy, and what makes me giddy is you watched D'Amico Ryans last year really pretty much turn lemons into lemonade on defense. Because when you looked at where this team ranked against the run, They had no business ranking that high against the run. Basically, what ended up happening is D'Amico Ryans had to change his system to basically sell out against the run. Because if you looked at individually each guy, Will Anderson's really good on both, against the pass and against the run. But the rest of the guys on on the defensive line, they aren't good run stoppers. Your linebackers, Denzel Perryman's okay. You know, you had, Christian Harris. He came on late in the year, but I mean, the beginning of the year, he's okay. Henry Toa is kind of, okay. But what happened is that he had to scheme it up to like, we are going to stop the run no matter what. And so when you watched us get gashed by Desmond Ritter of all people, when you watched us get gashed by Zach Wilson, when you watched us get gashed, by, a couple of other, quarterbacks, you're like, who the hell is this
Flacco
guy?
did us dirty one game.
Yeah, who the hell's this guy and why is he because you have to sell out against the run. Well, if you have better run defenders, number one, and you have a guy that, you have like three guys on your defensive line, at least at any one time, that can get after the quarterback. And you have another guy sitting on the bench over there, whoever it is, who can come in fresh to spill one of those guys, whether it's Autry or Anderson or Hunter. I mean, let's go. You're going to get some sacks. You're going to pressure that quarterback into throwing some bad balls. You're going to get some picks that you probably didn't get this year. And I think when fans look at that, when they look at sack totals, okay, those three guys are not getting a combined 40 sacks. I'm just going to tell you that right now. That's not happening. Okay, but what will happen is that as a team, we're going to get more pressure. And when you get more pressure, anything can happen. Sack fumbles happen, interceptions happen, sacks whenever, the other team is driving on you and you need a key third down. I mean, look at what Chris Jones did in the last, 49ers offensive play. He wrecked that whole play. Now you've got two or three guys on the defensive line that could all do that by themselves.
Absolutely. And at the end of the day, pressure bursts pipes. The more pressure you put on the quarterback, the more the ball gets thrown early, the more routes are disrupted. When you ask a cornerback to stay in coverage for 6, 7, 8 seconds, the way the Texans sometimes chased Russell Wilson around, or the way they lost a playoff game where you just could not contain Lamar Jackson because you kept chasing him around, guys are going to break open. Coverages are going to bust. You cannot hold coverage for more than 4 or 5 seconds in the NFL. If you can't make something happen in that time period, most likely something's going to break down. So the ability to put pressure on the quarterback is going to make guys like Lonnie Johnson look like a better player on the back end. It's going to make guys like Jimmy Ward into the ball hawks that we know that they can be. It's going to allow Stingley to lock down one side of the field potentially because I've only got 3 seconds to get rid of the football. I can't look left. I can't look at Stingley's side. He's got that covered. I need to look at the right side. So you're allowing this Texans defense hopefully to wreak havoc and to force a lot of turnovers. Because, again, as I said, pressure bursts pipes. And the more pressure you put on a quarterback, especially in this league, the more the ball gets knocked around, gets thrown early, jump a route, pick six, whatever you want. This is how you force turnovers in the NFL.
Okay, so widening our view here, Tim, because this is which is the biggest joke, the tampering period. I mean, these deals. I mean, there's no way you can iron out a contract in 3 minutes, and a lot of these deals are announced like right after 11 o'clock, which was the opening. But just looking at quarterback carousel, so you've got well we have Baker staying, so that's not on the carousel, but you've got Kirk Cousins going to Atlanta, and you've got Russell Wilson going to Pittsburgh. I mean, you do have Mac Jones going to Jacksonville as a backup, but I don't think that's really that big a deal. Who do you think did better between those two teams? And then, like, when you're looking at a guy like Justin Fields, like, where do you think he should land if he were to land somewhere outside of Chicago?
I'm sorry. I think the team that did the best is the Steelers. I think you and I could both agree that Kenny Pickett's not the guy. I think I saw it coming out of college. I like the local story. Maybe he could have grown into something, but through 2 NFL seasons, I don't see anything that makes me say this guy's good enough to win an NFL championship, especially when you have a defense the level that the Steelers have. So I like the idea of getting Russ, but then the first day that you have him, you trade away one of his weapons in exchange for a cornerback, and so we'll see what happens there. I think Gardner Minshew to the Raiders is an interesting one. I don't know necessarily what the plan there is long term. Are they going to try and draft someone this year? Do you hand the reins to Gardner? Is he the backup to O'Connell? That'll be an interesting one. Mac Jones, I think, you got a decent backup for Trevor Lawrence, right? Like, that's all that is. You're going to get a backup quarterback who has a potential upside in case your guy gets hurt. And then obviously Kirk Cousins got paid. Kirk Cousins seriously got paid. I think that's a lot of money for a really old Kirk Cousins in Atlanta. I really do. They've been in quarterback hell for 2-3 years now. But we'll see. I still think Minnesota's going to be in an interesting spot, Scott. There's been a lot of rumors of who could take that over. I know Sam Darnold's been rumored to be going there. I've seen that, they might consider trading for Trey Lance to play quarterback. So we'll see what Minnesota decides to do. I mean, obviously the winner's Kirk Cousins, right? You're really, really rich. You're a starting quarterback, and you've got some decent weapons. Nothing. I don't know. You got a good tight end. You've got a good running back who can catch and run the ball well. Drake London. Yeah. They've got some weapons. They've got a decent defense. I think that could be a good spot for Kirk. Indoor stadium. All the other places you visit are warm weather for the most part locations, so you don't have to play in. You're getting out of the NFC North, right? Like you don't have to go to Green Bay in the winter. You don't have to go to Chicago in the winter. You now get to go to Tampa Bay, indoor at New Orleans. You get to go to the Carolina Panthers, who I don't think they're going to be very good. And then Atlanta. So it's a very winnable division.
I think the irony is that I see Atlanta and Pittsburgh through very similar lens, although they went, in 2 different directions. Because we noted Patrick Queen went to Pittsburgh. There's no way Pittsburgh affords Patrick Queen if they went out and got Kirk Cousins. They got Russell Wilson for $1.2 million. Yeah. So the thing is that I don't know how good Russell Wilson is. I know he's better than Kenny Pickett. And you mentioned Kenny Pickett and a name I can't. He was that Astros pitcher. He pitched for the Royals last year. Had like almost 20 losses.
Jordan Lyle.
Jordan Lyles. He was the shit when he was coming out of the Astros system because he was the only guy coming out of the Astros system. And so Kenny Pickett was kind of the same in that was a very weak quarterback class. And so he was the only first-round pick from that class. So, Pittsburgh was like, oh, God, we got to replace Ben Roethlisberger. Well, I guess Kenny Pickett? Yeah, because he was the only decent quarterback in that class. But, if you compared him to, like, say, the current class we're looking at this year or even last year's class, he wouldn't have been anywhere near. He would have probably been a 3rd or 4th rounder. I don't know that either team is a Super Bowl contender because I don't know how good Russell Wilson is. But yeah, I agree with you. Atlanta should win the NFC South. I think the only team that's really going to give them any trouble will be the Saints. And I don't know if they figured out, what they're doing on offense. Because they had Derek Carr, and that didn't look all that good. And Carolina, I guess they picked up the wide receiver from Pittsburgh. They traded away Brian Burns, so their defense gets worse. So they don't have a first round pick.
And they didn't get
Where
any first round picks for Burns.
Right, you get a second and a fifth. So I don't know where Carolina's going. I don't know, and Baker Mayfield, he's Baker Mayfield. I mean, he's
I don't know though. Since
middle of the
since he became, since he played with Sean McVay, he's been a different quarterback.
he's a middle of the pack guy. He's not, he's not terrible. He's not good.
He's good
I
enough
mean,
to win that
compared
division.
this year, but I think with Kirk Cousins, yeah. And you want to find a guy, there is no guy in NFL history who can get paid like Kirk Cousins.
God,
That's the guy.
to the
That's the guy.
dancing all the way to the bank, man.
Man, that guy, he played it, when he was franchise tagged twice in Washington. I mean, that guy has just rid it to the bank.
Yeah.
I mean, he may buy a team before it all, comes crashing down.
Well, the problem is once you make one donation to the Trump campaign, they have you on that auto pay system. So he's probably been getting dinged every month in his bank account for Trump for America. So he's got to make a lot of money to replace the money that's being grifted out of his bank account on a regular basis.
I didn't know he was a Trumper, so I guess, who knows?
Well, we found out that Joey Bosa and Joe Burrow are Trumpers this last weekend as they hung out with the Orange Man at a UFC event. But speaking of Joe Burrow, a lot of potential trade discussion or rumor that that Jefferson could be on the move to Cincinnati, reuniting Chase, Jefferson, and Burrow on one team in Cincy. What are your thoughts on a move like that, Scott?
I would not want to be the capologist in Cincinnati, that's for sure.
I don't know how some of these teams do it. Philly just seems to have endless money to spend every single season. You dropped ridiculous money on Saquon Barkley, more than anybody thought he should get. And then you're bringing Gardner Johnson back again on another big deal. Like, where is it all coming from? Because you gave Hurts a huge extension. You've paid you paid the receiver Matthew. You traded and paid him. What's his name?
Brown. Brown.
Huh?
Brown. You talking about?
The receiver for the Phillies.
Yeah, Brown.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of his first name. Yeah.
Yeah, Brown.
Yeah.
Where's all this money coming from?
I guess are you getting the Jason Kelsey, retirement savings? They had another guy retire this week on the defensive line.
Fletcher Cox, didn't he?
Yeah, maybe you get some savings there. Well, and this is where if you're an economics major or you're a finance major, go sell yourself to one of these 32 teams. Because if you can find creative ways around the cap, you're worth $1 million a year as an employee. Because, how much money you can save. The Saints have been doing it for years. When they had Drew Brees, they would come in every year, they would come in over the cap, maybe cut one or two guys, and then somehow magically rework contracts and then just come back and compete again. They made some huge mistakes, like Michael Thomas, huge mistake, giving him all that money. He's a guy who's a free agent. Now, would he come for a small amount and approve it kind of deal? I could see, Caserio doing that kind of thing if he would come for like $2 or $3 million. But I think the best thing Caserio's done is, his way of playing the cap is he's waiting until late March and April with these guys who didn't get signed in the first wave, or you're going to see a whole slew of guys get cut right after the league year starts.
Yeah.
Those
June 1st designations. And I have to agree with you. It's so smart to leave yourself $25 million to see who gets cut on June 1st. Or they'll get cut now, but labeled a June 1st cap designation. And you can pick up another wide receiver. I don't think this team is done. I think they may have slowed down for now, and they'll see what happens. But as we saw with this flurry of first signings, guys are going to get cut and guys are going to get traded after you bring somebody else in. And if some of these receivers come down on their asking price when they've been sitting out there for a month and a half. Okay, now we're ready to talk at $5 million for a 1 year deal. I'm not paying you $10 million a year when you haven't stayed healthy in 3 years. Those are the kind of situations where it's a good thing to leave yourself $15-20 million of cap space to make a move like that.
Yeah, and I think, as you pointed out earlier, I mean, you go into this draft best player available because, going into free agency, you had so many gaps on defense. Today, as we stand, they can put a very competitive defense on the field. Do you want to upgrade some positions? Yeah. You probably need another linebacker that's better than Henry To'oTo'o. You probably want another corner opposite Derek Stingley that's a little better than whoever you've brought in. Can some of those guys compete for a job? I think you had Mike Ford's another guy. They re-signed Eric Murray. They re-signed Desmond King. So you have enough guys to field a defense. You can field a defense today, and you can feel reasonably good about it, particularly the defensive line. But like you said, you leave yourself $15-20 million. Hey, is there a linebacker out there that all of a sudden got really cheap? Add that guy. Is there another running back who slipped through the cracks? There's another guy. Wide receiver, another guy. So I don't know if there's any. I don't know what kind of draft this is for guards. Do you trust Kenyon Green?
I'm willing to head into camp with Kenyon Green and the two rookie centers we drafted last year, knowing one of them can slide to guard in a worst case scenario. That's where I think you maybe draft an offensive lineman early, but I don't feel like, again, I have to go out and sign somebody. I feel like between Juice Scruggs and the kid, the other
Jared
Patterson, I feel like those guys have shown at least enough to where, like, if those are your starting offensive linemen, we could go win football games.
Yeah. I've also had Kendrick Green, I think, who went down with an injury. I think he's got 1 year left on his rookie deal. And he started a couple of games at guard and, looked okay. So,
I mean, you could piece together an offensive line right now. I do think they probably draft somebody in the first 100 picks. But again, let the best one come to you. It could be a guard. It could be a center. It could be a tackle. I think you grab an offensive line piece for sure. But again, I think you just let this draft come. It's really an interesting place to be right now. But real quick, before we leave the NFL, and I guess a bad place to be is the Dallas Cowboys backfield, Scott. I don't know what's going on there. They seem to have swung and missed. If Texans fans were upset last night, Cowboys fans have to be livid. I think they were banking big on getting Derrick Henry. Well, he goes to Baltimore. You didn't get Saquon. You didn't get any of the people that you wanted. Pollard goes to Tennessee. Are we in bring back Ezekiel Elliott territory at this point?
Tony Dorsett.
I mean, it's not looking good right now for the old Cowgirls.
Well, what's funny is that Jerry Jones said they were all in. You tell me, what does that mean?
I don't know, because Gallup wants out. You don't get a running back. It just brings it back to how much truth do you now put into what Dalton Schultz had to say about basically the Cowboys practice facility? Because I live right by the Star. It is a circus. You can literally take a tour at any point. Everything he said was true. There's one-way mirrors, right, where the Cowboys players are working out and you're walking past like, ooh, Dak's lifting. Ooh, working on legs, knock on the wind. All that's true. So, and now if you're a player and you go visit this team, it's like, do I want to be treated like a zoo animal? Do I want to be in a fishbowl? Like, I get for some people, like, the gleam of the star is fantastic and you've dreamed of playing for the Cowboys your whole life. Hey, that's cool. But if I'm an NFL free agent and, let's even say the Cowboys and the Texans both offer me to where, like, I don't have a state income tax either way. why would you want to subject yourself to that? And at least to me, it seems like people have not up to this point.
So, when I was listening to Dalton Schultz, the thing that came to mind was basically the beginning of the Rocky 3 movie.
Yeah,
Remember when he's
where he's
training for
working
that
out in the
first
hotel.
fight?
Yeah,
And so, stopping to kiss a girl, sitting there, everybody's, has these games. You can buy all the merchandise. So you're Derrick Henry. And you're Derrick Henry, and you're pushing 30 if you're not 30 already. What's the one thing missing from your resume?
NFL championship.
Do you have any belief that you're getting that in Dallas?
No, I don't think anyone should.
And that, I think that's kind of the whole point. In that, there was, talk of him coming to Houston. But to me, if I'm Derrick Henry and I'm looking at, who is best positioned to take down the Chiefs, Baltimore Ravens is not a bad pick on his part. I mean, they were there in the AFC Championship game. I think they were, if some plays went differently, maybe the Ravens make it. So if you're Derrick Henry, why wouldn't you go to a team like Baltimore? I mean, I don't get it. I mean, if I'm a player searching for a ring, why would I go to Dallas? It doesn't make any sense.
I think
Now,
the NFC is wide open. I think the Niners are going to continue to be good, but if I'm an NFL player searching for a ring, I probably want to get out of the AFC, right? I want to avoid Patrick Mahomes at least until the championship round if I can. So I can at least understand going to the NFC for that perspective of it. But for every other reason, I think you're right. Unless you just believe that Dak can get him there, but I don't see that.
Well, but look at the other teams. I mean, if I'm looking in the NFC, I think who's closer to a championship, Detroit or Dallas?
Probably gonna be Detroit.
Okay. What about Green Bay with Josh Jacobs?
But I mean, how much different is he than what Aaron Jones gives you when he's healthy?
That's true, yeah. But you have Jordan Love, who looked like a quarterback on the come, certainly late in the year. When you start looking at um, the 49ers, the Rams were no slouches. They were better than what you thought they would be. You look at in the South, I think nobody in the South last year scared you, but Atlanta this next year I think wins at least 10, 11 games with the way that division is. And then of course you got the Eagles. So if you're a player knowing what the circus is in Dallas, why would you go there? This is where I'm going to win a championship.
Oh, it certainly is the juice worth the squeeze, right? In this scenario, I'd have to agree that it is not. But let's take a quick shift as we move away from the NFL into the NBA. The Rockets had been on an absolute tear, Scott. Sengun goes for, since our last broadcast where he went for a triple-double, 45 points, he followed it with another triple-double. Then all of a sudden, after a bit of a winning streak, Sengun goes down. And all of us collectively hold our breath. Luckily, it is a grade 3 sprain. He's most likely going to miss the rest of the season, but he does avoid any kind of major injury and a big long rehab over the offseason. And Sengun now in position to sign a 5-year, $225 million max contract in the offseason. So Scott, Sengun avoids the injury, but is up for a big payday here this summer. Are you giving it to him?
Yeah. I mean, I think when you look at this team and what we've looked at from these young guys is that none of them have been able to shoot consistently. Now, Sengun is not nailing a ton of three-pointers, but out of the group of young players, he's the only one that can shoot the basketball with some consistency. I mean, he puts the ball in the hole consistently. He's a guy, he's probably the best passer on the team consistently. Now, would I like to see him rebound a little bit more? Sure. Would I like to see him defend a little bit more? Sure. But I think he has, honest to God, grown in all those aspects in each of the 3 seasons. And then, during the sad thing is during that streak, we saw Jalen Green, actually playing some pretty good basketball. I don't know if you watched, the second half of that game against Portland, but that he posterized. I can't remember who it was,
He played a
but
nice
absolutely,
game. He played a great game. The whole team played a great game. You and I were
yeah.
texting during that one where he and Amen both really took over in the second half of that game.
And they were talking about Amen being a down the road All NBA defensive player, and that being his floor defensively. Now, of course, this is two Rockets announcers who are probably a bit homers, but he is basically if you want to make a comparison, he's Ben Simmons. He's Ben Simmons, and except for Ben Simmons being a head case. But he brings the exact same things to the table Ben Simmons brought. Good defender, good passer, good slasher, can do everything on a basketball floor except shoot. Does he become functional as a shooter? It remains to be seen. But I think keep Sengun out for the rest of the year. You're not playing for anything. You're not going to get into the play-in. So, put him in bubble wrap and, play those young guys, until they can't breathe. Make them grow. Let's see what we got. And let's play some Cam Whitmore a little bit more than 15 minutes a night.
Yeah, I'd be interested too. Let's maybe run the offense through Jabari the same way you do through Sengun. Let Jabari play the high post. Let Jabari get some of those touches on the elbow that he got in the summer league where he put up monster numbers. I think he's kind of relegated to playing outside the 3-point circle when Sengun's on the floor. If you looked at where he put up a lot of points in the summer league and in college, it was free throw line extended. So I'd love to see him get some mid range touches and see what we have in that sense and maybe let some of these young guys get some different looks under this new offensive set. I understand we got big money committed to Brooks and Van Fleet, but at the end of the day, the future of this team is Whitmore and Green and Amen Thompson and Jabari Smith, and hoping that two of those guys can hit as solid NBA role players, at least minimal, right? And with Green's case, hoping that maybe he turned another level. We'll see how he finishes the season. But I am intrigued with the idea of extending Sengun and making him that franchise player because he's just gotten better each and every season. And there's no reason to expect him to do anything other than continue to grind and potentially be a Jokic type player, right? Not necessarily Jokic, but a guy who can give you a double-double in assists and points. It may not even be the rebounds, but he can give you 9-10 assists a night and run the offense in the half-court sets and allow you, in a playoff basketball sense, when there's not as much up and down, to still get points in the half-court. And that's what a guy like Sengun or a Jokic does, is you can play half-court basketball and run the offense through them.
Yeah, I mean, he's about as close to a 20-10 guy as you have. I mean, he's not quite there in rebounds, but he's there in points. What I like about Sengun is that his willingness to work on his game. And that was one of the things, and you didn't grow up with Akeem. I grew up with Akeem. Akeem added a move every offseason. And that's something he did throughout his entire career. Sengun has, I don't know if he's adding moves necessarily, but he seems like he's adding something to his game every year. He's improving all the time. He's taking coaching. And I don't think he'll ever be a defensive player of the year or an all NBA defender, but he's giving more effort on the defensive end. And he's smart with the basketball. He has a high basketball IQ. And you want guys like that on your team. I mean, I think Fred VanVleet is a high basketball IQ guy. Sengun's a high basketball IQ guy. hopefully, I mean, I think Jabari Smith could be that guy too. Like you said, running it through the high post like he did in the summer league. I think he's a guy that's starting to show that he will at least contribute something on a nightly basis. And that's what you want your role players to do.
Yeah. Not everybody can be Michael Jordan. There's only one Michael Jordan, and there's only one Scottie Pippen, and there's one Dennis Rodman, and there's only one basketball. So you got to find your role, and however you add up to your 100 points every night, figure it out. But you've got to have a focal point of the offense and someone you can build this team around. So I like the idea of it being Sengun, and I do like the idea of building off of that and extending him and just kind of seeing where this season plays out. Because as we've mentioned before, you have the ability to swap picks with the Nets this season. So play the best basketball you can. Make a push for the play-in. I know we're probably not going to get there, but it'd be amazing if we could just make a push, give it the old, let's get a naked Tillman Fertitta, and little by little we need some like Velcro pieces that we can take off for every win. And then when you win enough games, you have a big naked cardboard Tillman Fertitta, just like Major League.
You guys stink.
Come on, that's what the team needs. Big old naked Tillman.
I see the cups still work. Oh man, that's movies. Oh man,
but
even tough guys get muscle pulls.
But it has been a fun week, and a lot of good things have happened. Scott, who are you tipping the cap to this week?
I'm going to tip my cap to D'Amico Ryans because I think this Daniel Hunter signing is all about D'Amico. I think this is all about D'Amico standing on the table saying, "You go get me a guy." And I am absolutely excited to see what he's going to do with a first-rate defensive line, first-rate front seven. In the back end, we need a little bit of help there, but you know what? No defense is going to be perfect. You're not going to have 11 Pro Bowlers on defense. So I'm excited to see what he's going to do, and, I'm ready for this season to start now.
Yeah, that's the fun thing about a good offseason or a team that, like the Texans, is building and makes good moves is it gets you ready for the season. I think it's been, you think back to this time last year, I don't know if I was that pumped for the season. I was scared. I was nervous for what the team was going to do with the pick. I'd be the first one to tell you I wasn't sure if C.J. Stroud was that guy. Nothing I had seen made me feel like this was a great quarterback class in general. You can go back and listen to our old podcast. I'm on record saying lose again for Caleb Williams. And so to be in this position now with, a quarterback that you would consider your franchise guy that you can build around, who's still relatively cheap, all that comes from D'Amico. It all stems from the hiring of D'Amico Ryans and getting the right people in the building. So I'm with you, Scott. I completely agree with a tip of the cap to D'Amico this week.
Do you have a separate tip of the cap, or?
No, I absolutely do. I think when you look at the teams around Houston, there's one rebuild or reboot that stands above all of them. When the Southwest Conference and the Big Eight decided to merge, there was a big old giant screw job done to the University of Houston, right? You had the governor of Texas was a Baylor girl. Some of the oil magnates wanted Texas Tech in. They get together with the state schools, TCU, UH, all those schools. They're left looking out. Next thing you know, fucking Baylor gets into what is now the Big 12. Now, the football program managed to hang on and, do okay. You had guys like Case Keenum. You had guys like Kevin Kolb make it to the NFL. But the basketball program was absolutely on life support. When I went to the University of Houston, I went to one basketball game, and I kid you not, Scott, I was the only fan in the stadium. The one seat that I chose to sit in was broken. smelled disgusting. Concession stand was a joke. And now you look at the sidelines or you look at the game for the University of Houston, and we're top hardest place to play in the country. You've got celebrities galore, or at least Houston celebrities, right, that are at almost every big UH game. And in the first season in the Big 12, the University of Houston is your regular season Big 12 champion. And I don't think a lot of people would have been surprised if they came in second or even third behind Kansas or Baylor or Tech or any of the tough competition. But for Kelvin Sampson to have established the level of just play and character and what is accepted at the University of Houston and the effort and defense that this team plays with night in and night out, you get the biggest tip of the cap I could ever imagine. It was an unbelievably proud moment as a Cougar to watch Kansas get the absolute shit kicked out of them at home on senior night when a guy or two guys who are, in my opinion, the ultimate Kelvin Sampson guys in Jamal Said and Jawan Roberts, 4-year guys, have gotten better every year. Jamal Shed is the best point guard in the country. He's a first-team All-Big 12 defender, first-team All-Big 12 player, and he has been the life of this team. So I tip my cap to Jamal Shed. I tip my cap to Kelvin Sampson. I tip my cap to Dr. Rene Couture for bringing this man onto the University of Houston's campus, because he's done it, right? He brought the University of Houston back from the brink. This team almost lost its basketball team. They were considering losing basketball from a team that had back-to-back Final Four appearances, put Clyde Drexler and Hakeem Olajuwon in the NBA, to literally about to lose your program, to now University of Houston is back. And that's thanks to Kelvin Sampson. And so I tip my cap to my University of Houston Cougars men's basketball team.
I'm going to double endorse on Kelvin Sampson, just singling him out. Because you looked at you mentioned the U of H football program. And so you think about where the U of H football program was, and you had 3 prominent coaches who all brought the team, to a bowl status and cashed in, went somewhere else. Kevin Sumlin did that. You had, the guy went to Texas.
Tom Herman, and
then
the worst one's Art Briles, because he took Robert Griffith III to Baylor with him. RG3 had committed to Houston before Art Briles went to Baylor, and he took RG3 to Baylor with him. Could you imagine if now, RG3 was a Cougar?
Sampson was in the same spot in his career because he had been on probation twice in Indiana and Oklahoma.
For text messages, for the stupidest shit too.
Yeah, and so he went to the NBA. He became assistant with the Rockets, and then U of H opens up, and that was a perfect opportunity for him. But what he could have done is he could have pulled one of those Art Briles or Kelvin Sampson or Tom Herman, and after 4 or 5 years said, like, deuces, I've rebuilt your program. I'm out. I'm taking a bigger school, somewhere else. He decided to stay. He worked it out. Now I can't think of a better basketball conference to be in, and I can't think of a better school to be at in that basketball conference.
You will very rarely hear me compliment Tillman Fertitta, Scott, but in this scenario, Tillman really has done a nice job of giving Kelvin everything you could ever imagine and giving him no reason to want to move anywhere else, right? We got you into the Big 12. You have state-of-the-art facilities. You have a state-of-the-art arena. You want for nothing. Your team travels well. You've got the Jordan sponsorship. I tip my cap to Tillman. In this sense, I still think the Rockets should have a nude cardboard cutout with Velcro pieces for Tillman Fertitta. I'm not taking that off the board for a playoff push. I want to make sure Raphael Stone knows I am pro Velcro cardboard cutout of Tillman naked.
Actually, I have a perfect message. Instead of "you guys stink," put up, "have you paid for that fork yet?"
Butter is extra.
Yeah. Butter, I'll give you a 3 for 2 deal. Um, okay. So, Tim, I don't know if you wanted me to lead off with the scumbag or if you feel nice and warmed up, lubed up, ready to go.
I'll go ahead. I've gone back and forth. I had a few. I almost went political today, honest. Scott, as a text message came across at one point that RFK Jr. is considering Aaron Rodgers as a vice president, and I was teed up and I was ready to go for that. And then I saw a video of Nick Saban sitting next to our favorite senator, Ted Cruz. And Nick Saban is lamenting that college sports has been ruined. It's not the same as it was. Too many guys are getting paid, yada, yada, yada. Fuck you, Nick Saban. Fuck you, man. You can't just ride off into sunset and have your Hall of Fame career and say, you know what? The game's past me. I can't connect with the kids anymore. I had a great ride. Thank you. You want to go back to where you get paid, you make a shit ton of money, and nobody else does. You want to go back to where you can leave a school to go to the NFL at a moment's notice and go get paid, but the kids are stuck at that school unless they want to sit out for a year and not be able to go play anywhere else. You loved when the rules benefited only you, but the moment that there's just a little bit of not only equality but also equity in the system for these players, you can't handle it anymore, and you walk away and you trash the entire system on the way out the door. You built your entire career on the backs of these kids. There would be no Nick Saban if there wasn't a D'Amico Ryans, if there wasn't a Chase Young, if there wasn't a Derrick Henry, Mark Ingram, Alvin Kamara, or not Alvin Kamara, Fat Boy from Eddie Lacy. All these guys who played their best football. Think of all the quarterbacks who played their best football for Nick Saban, who won national championships for Nick Saban, who don't really make any money in the NFL because they were system quarterbacks or whatever. You know, Greg McElroy's of the world. You made a shit ton of money that year, Nick, on national championship bonus or college game bonuses. But your quarterbacks who never amounted to anything are now calling SWAC games on ESPN 8 the Ocho, and you're a gajillionaire. So you know what? Fuck you, man. You're a piece of shit because you got yours. You are at one point the highest paid employee of the state of Alabama, a state that is hurting for everything. They paid you more money as a state employee than anything else in the entire fucking state. You get millions of dollars. You made it off the backs of other people. And the moment that they start to get theirs too, you can't hang and torch the system on the way out the door. You're a scumbag.
Roll Tide. I'll say this, though. And I think the NIL system needs, it probably needs, I don't know, I'm going to say an overhaul. It needs to be tweaked. But you know who the worst person is for that message?
Nick Saban. Yeah.
Because you're at Alabama. You could get any kid you want in the country. You've got donors, and alumni coming out your ass who, can foot the bill for that. The people who want to, people are going to be complaining are, Middle Tennessee State or Idaho A&M or Colorado Naval Academy or, whatever. Those are the schools, like a Rice locally. What kind of kid do you think Rice is going to get? I mean, they have to, number one, you have to, make it into the school academically. And then is there going to be anybody who's going to be there for NIL money for a kid going to Rice?
No.
Well,
Not
no.
for football, at least. Maybe baseball.
Maybe baseball, but baseball, ever since Graham left, they've been trashed. So, yeah, you're absolutely the wrong guy. Now, if you wanted to make a generic message of saying, "Hey, I was at Alabama and I benefited from this, but smaller schools are going to have difficulty," hey, a moment of honesty, good for you. But to sit there and go like, it's not fair that these kids make money. You know what isn't fair? What isn't fair is I could play 4 years at a school, like say Ed O'Bannon, have my likeness be on a video game and receive $0 for that. That's unfair. What's unfair is that, some guy could go into the team shop, buy my jersey, but then if they ask me to sign it, they can't pay me any money for that signature because then I'll be on probation. That's not fair. It's not fair that I can't get even a piece of those apparel sales whenever I'm the reason they're going in and buying it. They're not going in and to buy, a Nick Saban polo. They're going in to buy, that Derrick Henry jersey or that Eddie Lacy jersey or even Greg McElroy. I mean, how much money could a Greg McElroy probably made if he had gotten a piece of those jersey sales when he was the quarterback of that team for 2 or 3 years?
Yeah. Think about how much money Rhett Bomar made just from simply being clocked in at a used car lot he didn't work at.
Right. And the whole thing, but with a Greg McElroy, would he be able to retire? No. But, if you tell me that I could get $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, that's a pretty good head start in life.
Yeah.
I mean, but you're going to sit there and say, no, I deserve my 8, 9, 10 million a year for my radio show, my camp, my television show, my, sponsorship of this, shitty insurance company. I deserve all that. But these kids, no, not a dime.
Yeah. Scumbag.
All right. So I don't know if I'm going political today necessarily as I'm going to go social, more religious, what have you. So I'm minding my own business. I'm scrolling through, Facebook, which, by the way, minding your own business is my single favorite phrase in the English language because anybody who says that is never minding their own business. But I was minding my own business, looking through Facebook, and I see somebody, that I graduated high school with, not going to name names because I'm not that kind of person, who put down on the cup that she had gotten from Starbucks that they have now agreed to pay for gender reassignment surgery for any employee that should desire it. Okay, so here's my question. How is Starbucks doing that, Tim?
Yeah, I don't know because they won't even work with unions. I don't understand how we're going to expect them to pay for gender reassignment surgery.
Well, the company's saying they're paying for it through their private insurance company that they're going through, right?
That just means they're covering it.
Yeah. So, but my point is that our tax dollars going to that?
No.
So why do I care what Starbucks chooses to do for its employees? Now, we talked, and I think I remember them being the scumbag. You talked about Wendy's and their I don't know what you call it, dynamic pricing or whatever it was.
Surge pricing, yeah.
But surge pricing. I went in last week, got, dinner at Whataburger for my wife and I, for Janet and I. 2 meal deals under $20 for Whataburger, which is universally regarded, at least in the state of Texas, as the best fast food burger you can buy. And I'll put it up against any fast food burger.
Come at me. Hat Creek, my guy.
Okay, I've never had that, so I'll give you that. I'll give you that one. But for a chain, I don't know that you can find a better burger at a chain. What I know is that Wendy's doesn't have a better burger.
No.
And Wendy's is more expensive. See, and so here's my point. If you think that it's a shitty cup of coffee, or you think it's way too expensive a cup of coffee, don't go to Starbucks. There's a simple solution to that. But if you have a problem in that, well, I was okay paying $5 for this cup of coffee yesterday, but when I found out that maybe a nickel of it is going to gender reassignment surgery, well, damn it, I'm out. And, what does that say about you as a Christian, that we're going to completely judge people who have nothing to do with you who might possibly get gender reassignment surgery. How does that impact you? I don't understand. I don't get it. And I don't get is that, we're talking about 1% of the population, Tim. I can count
If
on
that.
one I can count on one finger the number of students we've had successfully transition in the last 10 years that I've worked at my campus. Now, I think there are some students that are probably in the process of. I'm not going to invade their privacy and ask them, because, Greg Abbott wants me to turn in their parents. I'm not doing that. But one kid out of 10 years. So why are we freaking out? So we're freaking out like I hear commercials like, well, he passed a bill banning men from playing women's sports. How many people are doing this? I was a pretty decent golfer in high school, Tim. I wasn't good. I was decent. Maybe if I'd had a sex change, I could have won district in the girls' division. Maybe. Was I going to do that? No. Why would I go through all that in order to, have the possibility of winning a tournament? And then, probably what would have happened is I would have gone and I would have lost and I would have really been, humiliated because going through all that just to, to lose a golf tournament just like I was when I was playing with the boys.
Yeah, I think you've described the state of America pretty well. Just because I don't like something, it now means no one can have it. And there's no such thing as individual freedoms anymore, Scott. It's gotten to the point where we can't just be like, hey, I don't like what this company does. I'm just going to stop going there. It has to be that, plus I'm going to hop on Facebook, plus I'm going to write my congressperson, plus I'm going to make a video, plus I'm going to call Alex Jones and talk about the new world order trying to force transgenderism on me through my Starbucks cup of coffee. I can't remember the last time I went to Starbucks. And it has nothing to do with any of their beliefs, because I could care less about where they spend their money. I could care less about any of that stuff. They don't pay their employees enough. That's my biggest issue. But the real issue for why I don't go to Starbucks, it's a $7 cup of coffee. I'm good. Make that at home. Buck. But at the end of the day, these are the same people who got up in arms over one Bud Light can. These are the same people who think that we're coming to take their guns. These are the same people who have their own coffee brand for the people who think they're coming to take their guns and Black Rifle Coffee. Just go there, lady. Go to Black Rifle. There's the fascist coffee company will take good care of you there. You have your own coffee brand. Just go there. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Scott. We live in a world where it's not good enough to just mind your own business anymore. You have to force other people to mind the business the way you'd like to as well.
Yeah, and I had the other meme. I think you saw the other meme, or the people basically like, I don't want to pay for anybody else's debt,
Yeah.
and it's like you just hit republicanism perfect. I mean that whole meme was like perfect conservative thought.
Yeah, it's fun being in Texas, guys. If you aren't from here and you just happen to find the show, we've got some really fucked up people who live down here. But we're gonna cut it off right there, and we're gonna just move on down the road. And Scott, next week we'll get a little bit more into spring training and into some projections. Scott has been running numbers galore. I feel like every day he's sending me a text, hey, I ran numbers or I ran some projections. So next week we'll get a chance to sit down and look at some of those projections and hopefully put together a pretty good prediction for the Astros 2024 season.
Yeah, I mean I've gone all the way through left field, and it looks, on the hitting side, I'm liking what I'm seeing.
Well, that's going to be it for you here this week. As always, we appreciate everybody who joined us. Be sure to go to the battleredblog.com and check out Scott's articles, his writings, his reviews of the Texans free agency period. I know he's going to have some good stuff up there as well. And if you haven't checked out the Substack for Scott, it is Thoughts from a Native Texan over there on Substack. Be sure to like and follow the show on Facebook. Pound that subscribe button on YouTube. And we appreciate those of us who make us a part of your week. We will see you next week on Born on the Bayou Sports.